So are sharp knives actually safer?
Well, in this video, we'll be looking at some real-life accidents, compare the differences between sharp versus dull knives, compare the difference between sharp versus sharp knives, and show why everything isn't always as it seems.
So you're saying it's probably that's probably not a great idea? I don't know how I get myself involved in these type of discussions. Sharp knives are not safer than dull knives. Sorry.
Because dull blades are more dangerous than sharp ones.
Read somewhere on the internet that the dull sword is more dangerous.
Warning, do not attempt anything you see in this video. I am an untrained professional.
So that was approximately 8 seconds of a 9-minute video that didn't have anything to do with sharp versus dull knives, but it seems that the only takeaway from that video was...
You're wrong. Dull knives are not safe. The reason why sharp knife is safer is because blunt knives do wild crap. Regarding the safer reasons why the phrase sharp edge is better than a dull knife, if you accidentally remove one of your...
So it seems that the general consensus is that sharp knives are safer, but is this actually the case? Or is it just something that has been repeated so many times that people start to believe that it's true?
Frequencies took me to flat Earth.
Because sharp knives being safer goes against my personal experience. Because all of my really bad cuts that have actually left scars have all come from extremely sharp knives doing things that they weren't supposed to, like cut you. Or opening in your pocket at Blade Show and unknowingly cutting you as you're just walking along. I'm going to show you exactly what happened, but because sharp knives are dangerous, I'm gonna dull it first.
To be clear, the knife opened in my pocket. I did not put it in my pocket while it was open. I don't know how this happened, but I have theories. And this, surprisingly, isn't the first time this has happened.
And speaking of Blade Show, I don't think that there's another place on the planet where you'll see more Band-Aids in actual use.
I sliced myself on it.
Did you? I got a Band-Aid. I already did myself too.
And none of those cuts have come from dull knives. If you know, you know.
Nothing but a giant room full of the world's dullest knives.
Now it seems that people have been saying that sharp knives are safer for as long as I can remember, but is there any actual research on this? Or is it just a saying? So I did some quick Googling and it seems that there isn't any actual research, data, or studies that have been done on this. And I think that this is a serious problem for the sharp knife is safer consensus. And the reason for this is because it's easy to say that an accident happened due to a dull knife and just leave it at that, and not blame the actual cause, the person using the tool.
This just so happened to remind me of another saying.
The problem is that without any data on exactly what happened in every instance, or whether the knife was in fact dull, or the incident would have happened regardless of knife sharpness, we can't really truthfully answer this question. Was the knife actually dull, or did you just assume the knife was dull because someone had an accident with it? So let's look at this recent accident that actually happened to me. So if this knife was dull, would this knife blade have effortlessly cut through my pants and then effortlessly cut part of my finger off if I had just brushed the blade as I was walking along, like I did at Blade Show? The answer is no. This accident was 100% caused by the knife being extremely razor sharp.
That's not what sharp knife is safer means. You're misunderstanding. So that example is not relevant.
So I tried to find some actual video evidence on this subject, and this is what I found.
So because YouTube is weird about this stuff, I can't show you some of these entire clips, but all of this is easily searchable for your own research.
Stop. Getting the door working. Oh. Medic. Is when your fingers are sticking out.
I'm trying. Yes, damn, I'll just cut myself.
My axe doesn't have its face on it. Stupid.
It's okay.
Of my finger off.
It must be just me. It's gotta be just me.
So were any of these incidents caused by the knife being dull? You know, I really don't think so, but we can't tell for sure. So let's blame it on something that I think we all can agree on, which is...
Because I wasn't concentrating.
I simply wasn't paying attention. Or your finger was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now the argument here is that, well, dull knives make you push harder, therefore making it easier for you to slip when cutting something. But is this actually true?
Well, here is a completely dull knife cutting up an onion. Pretty easily, I may add. And here's a tomato. I've seen plenty of cooks trying to cut something like a tomato with the dull knife and it slides off the tomato's skin and onto the finger that's holding it. Some chicken? I mean, serious question. Even though this is a super dull knife, what is the risk of me cutting myself with this? This is the exact same knife that we just showed cutting everything. There's no tricks here. This is not a joke.
I'm trying to figure out how one would slip and cut their finger unless their finger was somewhere where it shouldn't have been in the first place.
Dull knife. Sharp knife. Now, I did find one example, and only one example, where it could be argued that the knife being obviously dull caused the accident. But with the carelessness of the operator and the way that the knife was being used, we still don't know if an accident would have occurred if it was also a sharp knife. The idea here is that inadvertent blade contact happens with both dull and sharp knives, and I don't personally think that the sharpness of the blade determines this. I think it has to do with simply being careless. And if this is the case, a sharp knife is more likely to actually cut you than a dull one if it inadvertently comes in contact with you.
So I think people's idea that a sharp knife is safer is simply due to the fact that for certain items, we have this knife here, which cuts through this piece of leather like nothing, like it almost wasn't even there. It's very low risk when you're actually doing the cutting task. Now we have our dull knife, and we'll go ahead and push this through and see if it's as easy. And it's definitely not as easy. We're going to have to reposition our finger down lower on our leather piece in order to get a pretty good cut through there. And that increases our probability of the blade coming into contact with our finger. The only problem here with this example is that this is actually not a dull knife. This knife right here is actually still, let's see if it'll, still paper towel cutting sharp for the most part. Actually, I think that that knife is a little bit sharper than this knife here. But as you can see, we have two extreme, this is absolutely hair-popping sharp here still. We have two extremely sharp knives, but one of them is technically more dangerous because we're repositioning our finger and putting it into the cut path. Why is that the case? Because the apex sharpness actually, for a lot of cutting tasks, doesn't have a whole lot to do with how easily the knife passes through something.
It's actually the geometry or thinness of the knife that determines how easily it passes through something, especially when it comes to the vast majority of kitchen cutting tasks. And this is easily demonstrated here by cutting through an onion with this extremely sharp but super thick Scandi grind knife.
That was actually way harder than I thought it was going to be with this knife.
Now, if we switch back over to our squared off, super dull, but also super thin knife, our onion cuts no problem with very little force.
Like, it's got to seriously wedge it apart. So here we have an example where a sharp knife would definitely be way more dangerous than a dull one. And yet another scenario where a sharp knife would actually be safer than the dull one.
Safer means less probable to cause an injury during typical use. When you use a dull knife, you apply more force. That increases the probability of injuries. Okay, define safer. Define force. Because here's a real life accident where 0 force was applied, and yet the accident still happened.
So I think what this demonstrates is that this is a far more complicated topic than what most people think. And let me tell you, I have seen some thick kitchen knives being used professionally. So is it actually edge sharpness or lack thereof that's causing you to push harder and making your knife more dangerous? Well, maybe, but it also may be something else, like geometry thickness after being sharpened 300 times.
What are we even talking about anymore?
So I think that what is necessary here is a study. So I've arranged one. I've decided to get 2 groups of 25 third graders apiece who have never used a knife before. One group gets a razor sharp kitchen knife, and the other gets a plastic trainer knife. And we're going to give them some basic instruction on how to use them and then leave them alone for about an hour cutting onions. The only problem here is that the insurance company wouldn't let me give razor sharp knives to third graders. Yeah, hey, I just have this really great idea for a video and I need to make sure that my insurance covers it. It's going to cost how much? So you're saying it's probably that's probably not a great idea because it's dangerous.
Dull knives are not safe. I've been a chef for 45 years.
I think the actual problem here is spending your entire life inside of a room with blue painted walls, and then assuming that because blue is the only color wall that you've ever seen, that means that every wall is thus painted blue. Everything's blue. When the reality is that when you step outside your room, there's more than one color of wall.
Do you think learning is what I meant by typical use?
I don't know. You tell me. Because you have to define and give context to what you're talking about. And apparently sharp knives are only safer within one very specific scenario, when cutting onions, tomatoes, or pumpkins. And all the other accidents that happen are irrelevant, because that's all people do with knives. Or it doesn't fit the narrative.
Because this is an accident that actually happened and wouldn't have been as bad had the knife been way duller, but for some reason this example doesn't fit typical use. So it can't be counted.
So what I typically do here when I'm making knives, thinning knives, or just working on knives in general, I'll typically sharpen these to as sharp as I possibly can before I do anything with them. That way they're safer, because if they do cut me, the slice will be super clean and it'll heal faster. Ouch!
If you're interested in sponsoring a real research study on sharp knives versus dull knives and which one is safer, please reach out to me. You will assume all of the responsibilities for any of the accidents that occur with the sharp testing group, and I'll be liable for any damages with the dull knives group. So I'll take one for the team and take the more dangerous group. Talk to you soon.
From now on, no more sheath for the hatchet. It's safer this way. You guys aren't gonna believe this, but I just cut myself. I opened the drawer to reach in to grab something, and this stupid guy was sitting upright like that and got my finger.
Sharp stuff is much more likely to cut you through inadvertent blade contact while the knife isn't in use than by a dull knife slipping onto your finger while it is in use.